And I thought it was important to maybe start off with the importance of the work that these guys are doing, because they really are, they're number two, as Steve defined it to me a couple days ago, they're the number 2 print media in the state. That's phenomenal.
Digital print media.
Digital print media.
We have no real print.
And that's phenomenal, because if you saw where they were a year ago, they were like number 9 or 10, and they've just shot through, and they're only behind the union leader. And you know, they're more credible than the union leader, in my humble opinion. But I've come to admire these guys. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them because of who they are. They have nothing but character. There's honesty behind everything they say. They have their own sense of wit and humor, which makes it really enjoyable to follow the news. And with that, you know, I just wanted to also mention that Bill O'Brien, who's running for U.S. Senate, he might be here tonight. And so when these guys are done, if they're here, I'd like to give Bill just a couple of minutes to talk. If you don't know him, he's well worth listening to. And if, you know, knowing most of you really, really well, if you don't know Bill O'Brien, I think you'll have a very good sense of who he is as well by the time you leave tonight. He's a man of integrity and honesty, and he's just a very humble guy. You know, he can't get up there like Trump and rock the House. He doesn't have that kind of personality, but he's a former Speaker of the House, and he had accomplishments that were just were so impactful in a positive way for our state. So with that, let me invite Skip and Steve up, let them introduce themselves, and then you know, we'll open it up. Now, these guys have had Grok meetups in the past, and what they've done is they've started to talk, and then what? You open it up to question and answer?
Actually, I'm Skip Murphy, by the way. I'm co-founder and owner of Granite Grok. To answer the question, we hold these meetings not so much just to, you know, do a formal presentation, but more of a case of getting the readership, folks like you, to be able to interact with us, the writers. And it's mostly me trying to push the writers out. We gotta meet our readers, and we need to listen to what they have to say, because they're the ones that are driving the traffic, and they're the ones that are, you know, bolstering us and giving us confidence that we're on the right track, and we want to move forward with that. But yeah, every month I'm going to try to do we've had, what, 5 or 6 Grok meetups at this point. Kind of fell down during the holidays, and now I'm going to restart. So this is sort of as I put it on Granite Grok, this is a Grok meetup that really isn't quite a Grok meetup, because this is a little more formal. But generally, people come in, we sit down, I have the writers keep, you know, going around the room, talk to them, find out what's going on, and then sometimes we'll do a stump the Grok kind of deal. We'll all line up and get questions, or people will say a few words, and we go from there.
I just want to point out one person in the room. It's Stefan, right? Would you please come up just for a second?
Oh, it's with this one.
If you've read about the assault at Windham High School, this is the man who stepped in and stopped it. This is him. So I've heard you have stitches and a broken jaw, is that correct?
Broken jaw, yeah, broken jaw right here. Broken jaw. Lost tooth. You can see the college in my nose. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for stepping in. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
That's right.
So I'm Skip, he's Steve. Granite Grok started in 2006. And it was a case of, my co-founder was Doug Lambert. We had met on a radio show in the Lakes region. And all of a sudden this new thing called blogging started to come around, and I kept pushing the show owner, you ought to be blogging to get your message out. And so after a year I said, heck with it. Hey Doug, he doesn't want to do it. Let's start it ourselves. So we agreed. And back at that time, it was sort of a case of, all right, he's more the political person, I'm the technical person. My background is as a software engineer, not as a commentator or writer or legal guy. I just pound out code for a living, and did for many years. So I created the website, and then we just started writing. And we thought at the beginning that, with our family members, maybe 5 or 6 other people a week would read us. And yeah, we weren't all that sure about our family members either. My wife read it a couple times and said, yeah, you go do your thing. That'll be your hobby for a while. So we did, and we almost got up, the way that blogs used to be evaluated, well, are you just a local blog, a state level blog, or a national blog? We almost got to that national level, and then we kind of got stuck. So I made the decision that we'll just stay state level. So our name was Granite Grok, Granite the state, and Grok, okay, this doesn't come off very well in plain English narrative, but I was a big science fiction reader back when I was young. And Robert Heinlein, one of the Golden Age writers, had a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. And it was all about, I know I'm going to cringe now, about humans who left Mars but forgot a baby. And Martians raised the baby. And Grok means to understand fully and deeply. So it kind of fit. We understand New Hampshire politics deeply and fully. And we've been doing it now for 16 years. Along the way, we've collected a few other writers, like 14. Okay, it's not calculus. I was never good at math, but calculus I can do.
I can do calculus. You keep the calculus.
Thank you. So we have really gotten involved. The one thing I like about the folks at Granite Grok who write what we call Groksters, we're all political activists, not just writers. Every single one, in one way or another, is either part of an advocacy group, or has run for political office, or a whole combination of groups and offices and things like that. So we know the politics from the inside out. A lot of us spend time down in Concord, or working with New Hampshire state reps, sometimes state senators, on getting things done, or in a lot of cases, not done at all, because as this sign says, freedom and liberty are our basic watchwords. That is our intent, to go back to the founders' notion of a limited government that maximizes individual freedom and liberty. The quantification of freedom is the number of choices you get to make in your lives. Big government, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen, means you have less choice in all areas of your life. And that's why we focus on people who would take that away, to the point where there's even a bill now in the House of Representatives that is specifically designed against us, HB 1159, cyber stalking, cyber bullying, and doxing. Basically, out of the 6 prime sponsors, 4 of them are people that we pick on because they haven't learned the lesson. If you say things or do things that are stupid, we're gonna write about you. And they haven't figured out what the Streisand effect is, which is, side issue, Barbara Streisand got upset about an aerial photographer who was taking pictures of her mansion, took him to court. Well, in the blogosphere, which is, all the compendium of blogs all over, they heard about it and they said, well, we'll just print those pictures on our blogs as well. So instead of silencing the news story, she made it worse. And that's what these New Hampshire state reps have done to be able to shut us down. I even had one state rep, New Hampshire state rep Jan Schmidt, go to our hosting company to try to get us shut down because of hate speech. All we did was just put up her voting record, and when she said something dumb, we'd comment on it. But that's hate speech. Hate, we're haters. But that's kind of what we do. And now, Steve, your turn.
Hi. That's it. Skip covered most of the general stuff. I want to cover the sort of growth and expansion. really 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I decided that New Hampshire had a huge void in its media universe. Now, Granite Rock had been around for a long time, and I had started something called the New Media Militia. And my goal was to aggregate content from all the conservative and libertarian sites around the state, put it in one location so people could go find it, pick and choose. Can you hear me? You can hear me okay, right? Pick and choose what stories they want to read, and then go visit those sites and then maybe follow them, you know, kind of lift everybody up, get more people seeing what the libertarians are doing and what Right to Life is doing and what School Choice is doing. And after doing that for a really long time, not even a year, in the internet, that's a long time, I discovered it was very difficult. Nobody was producing content. Basically, you'd get a couple articles now and again. For comparison's sake, some websites would write 2 or 3 articles a month. We write about 300 a month, just to give you a kind of, we didn't back then, we do now. And I said, well, we've got all of this, you know, all this stuff to talk about, and we're the live free and die state, and we're pro-Constitution, pro-New Hampshire Constitution, pro-Republican platform, currently written. And nobody else is really pushing this in the internet media universe. I said, so we should own it. It should be ours. And so we made a commitment to raise money, to improve the website, to improve the mobile experience, to improve everything about it, to try and bring in more writers, to get better equipment, to be more places. And we've done some of those things. And so, you know, we got a lot of help. We got a lot of donations, and we rebuilt the website. And just changing the mobile experience alone, I mean, because everybody's on a phone, right? Just about everybody. We now get more than half our traffic from mobile traffic. We didn't used to get but 10 or 15%. So we went from being like 9th in the digital media universe, which means like every newspaper has a website and they get traffic on their website. NHPR has one, Union Leader, Concord Monitor, National Telegraph. So I went to Alexa Rankings, which is a globally recognized ranking system for traffic on websites, and I started keeping track of where we were on this list. And I had a list of like 30 some odd different sites around the state. And you know, about 15 or more of those are actually print media sites that have a digital footprint. And I noticed that the Keene Sentinel was getting more internet traffic than us, and I was like, what's that about? they're terrible. So we went out and we started pushing out social media. We started using Facebook, Twitter, whatever we could to try to grow our audience. And within a month or two, we beat them, and the Telegraph, and the Seacoast papers, and the Concord Monitor, and for a while, the Union Leader. So if you were looking for digital news in New Hampshire on the internet, we were #1 for 4 months last year. Now, keep in mind, we don't do weather, we don't do sports, we don't do local events. There's no page that says what the church is doing or the senior center is doing or anything else. We're just pretty much news, politics, and opinion. And we were #1 for digital print in New Hampshire. That was our goal. I said, well, maybe we can catch WMUR. Nah, it's not gonna happen. Hearst Broadcasting is huge.
Yet.
They get traffic from everywhere, and we would have to be a TV station. So I said, forget that. But
We're working on it. Slowly.
We'll get there. So the goal now is just to kind of stay where we are, build this foundation, and then move forward. So we started the microgroks. The microgroks are just basically like patch sites. You've got Merrimack Patch and Concord Patch, and they're all basically run by the same guy. But we said, well, we wanted to tap into local news, local stories. Some people just want to read about what's going on in their town. So we can't be in every town. There's just no way. We have jobs. We're full-time employed. We do this as a hobby. So I was like, well, you know, we talked about it, and we said, well, we'll find people in these towns if they're really interested. They want to write stories about local news, local events, local politicians, local morons, local idiots, local crazy people, whatever it is, as long as it's from a conservatarian, you know, standpoint, filtered through that process, that we could build traffic in local towns and then cover those issues. In my town of Merrimack, I mean, we haven't set one up there yet, but I bet they'd love it. But here's the thing. Gotta have people who are gonna write. Because the first rule of our success is that we decided to make a commitment to produce about 10 posts a day over the course of 12 to 18 hours, 6 a.m. to about 9 p.m. We write later, yes, it's a guideline, not a rule. Once you make that promise, you have to keep it. So as an internet reader, if you go to a website and you know there's new content there every day, if you go there and there's no new content, you're going to be like, huh, what's that all about? If you go a couple of days and there's no new content, you're going to go somewhere else because the internet's huge. Why should I waste my time checking this website if there's nothing there? So we're committed to that goal. So whether I have to write them all myself or somebody else does, we try to do at least 10 posts every single day. So we kept the promise, and that's a huge part. The content, pretty consistent. Ideologically, we admit that we have a conservative bias. We're not pretending to be neutral. We didn't say we are the watchdogs of the people like the media does and then turn around and watch the government do things it's not supposed to and ignore the bad stuff. Like Skip said, we don't care who you are. I get Republicans all the time who come to me and say, how come you're always picking on Republicans? I say, how come you're not acting like one? All right? That's what it is. It's constitutional government, limited government, liberty, freedom, individual rights, okay? I don't care if you're the chairman of the party who has called me names, not this one, previous ones. The only time I've ever been doxxed was before doxing existed, and it was a high-ranking member of the state Republican establishment who did it to me, tried to get me fired from my job. So, you know, when somebody like Jan Schmidt or Sherry Frost or something says, you're a hater, and I'm like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna write about that, because that's what we do, right? Double down.
Absolutely.
Double down.
Double down.
Double down. Always double down. And then, so now, you know, we have a Windham microgrok, we have one in Guilford, because he lives there, and in Manchester and Nashua, and we're trying to build those up, get those sort of self-functioning, because Nashua, Manchester, big places, you'd think there'd be a lot of people who would want to write stories. Yeah, not so much, you know? It's a lot harder than I think it is, because I just do it naturally, it's sort of something I do. But, you know, everybody's different. Some people will run for office, some people will, you know, hold signs or do all the different things, stuff envelopes, make phone calls. I will never phone bank in my life. I will write 10 blog posts a day, but I will not pick up a phone to call somebody. I hate the phone. You can text me though. You can IM me, that's great. So this is my contribution, and I didn't start out at Granite Grog. I started out on my own blog because Barack Obama was running for president and Jeanne Shaheen wanted to be our senator in 2008. And I was like, oh no, I have thoughts about that, I'll share them. And the first month I was doing that, Jane Aiken from CNHT found me and said, hey, you should join CNHT, Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. And I said, all right, I'll do that. And then she said, hey, you know, we have a weekly radio show. I said, really? I have some experience in radio from high school. A couple weeks later, I'm on a weekly radio show with Ed Nail from the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers for 2.5 years. About a month after that, Jane introduces me to Bob DeMora, who runs NH Insider. Now I'm blogging at NH Insider. And my very first blog post back in the day when this started, they had Democrats and Republicans writing there. My very first blog post, the Democrats snapped like twigs. And I'm like, this is it, I've arrived. So it just kept going. And then come 2010, I started writing with Skip because he was already sharing my stuff on his website. So we had a lot of writers come and go. Right now we have about 20 different people, most of whom write once in a while. Majority of the content's written by 3 or 4 people. 2 of them are standing in front of you. And so our goal is just to, you know, really start to hyper-focus on local activity and build that into the main site, and then try to spread that, because we all know that whatever's going on in your town is going on in somebody else's town, and until they see it, they're not going to go look for it, because they're not going to know. So we really hope that having a Windham Grok and having a Guilford Grok and a Monadnock Grok and whatever other websites that we put up in here will get people to focus on those issues, those local issues that you know about, that are driving you crazy, that you know are in their town, because that's one of the things Ed now taught me. We talked about municipal corruption a lot in tiny towns in New Hampshire with a couple thousand people in them. And it's the same, it's just as bad as Washington DC, it's just in a little town. It's the same thing. But most people are like, no, no, no. Oh yeah, you know, you probably experienced it yourself. So we hope to be able to help expand that by going out, meeting people, talking about the website, getting them to drive there, pushing local people to write or contribute to local websites, like Windham Grok. And that includes submitting letters to the editor. You can write it and just send it to us. Sending us local stories, sending us news about your local officials, and letting us write based on what you send us. Because, like I said, we are fully employed. This is a hobby, but we love a good story, especially when some crazy politician steps off the plantation and gives us the opportunity to make an example of him. So, thank you. Should I step up?
Thanks.
Yeah,
You said a lot.
I did.
A lot of it's true. A lot of it's very true.
It's true.
A lot of it's true. Just to emphasize a couple of things that you talked about. We do have, as an engineer, you always have to have a standard of quality, a standard of measure. Ours is, as Steve said, the US and the New Hampshire Constitution, as well as the conservative planks of the NHDOP. And while we do go after anybody, we don't care if you have an R after your name, a D, an independent, a socialist, a greenie, or anything else like that. That's where we write from. We're very hard on Republicans because if you say you're going to have an R after your name, then yes, you should keep the platform uppermost in your mind. If you are a legislator, you should be following the US, but especially the New Hampshire Constitution here in the state of New Hampshire. I have a page on Granite Grok, progressives and the proper role of government and your subservience to them, because they say stupid things and then it gets back to me. And there are a number of state reps that have said, I don't have to follow the Constitution as they are writing our laws. It's not their job, they say. It's not up to us to determine what is constitutional. Well, we take the opposite tack. It's everybody's concern, not just the people that you send to Concord, but it's everybody here, it's everybody out there. We've become too lax and too flaccid about what our representatives, our elected representatives, are doing in our name. So we do go after them. And it's something that we really do enjoy. We've got about 35,000 posts on Granite Grok over the years. I've done about just over 14,000. You've done about 12,000. And it takes a while to write.
That's a really big number.
It is when you start looking at it. But let's face it, Steve, we've gone well beyond a hobby. This is an obsession.
We should see therapy.
The writing is the therapy.
I blog in this therapy.
And what gives me a lot of pleasure is that everybody gives up of their time voluntarily. None of us are paid. And when we look at the Alexa ratings and we see that we are beating multi-million-dollar enterprises in what we do, it makes me giggle. And it's a lot of fun. But we always know that it's folks like you who are reading what we're doing that allows us to do that giggling. And that pushes us on to do more. Blogging is not easy. It takes a lot of discipline. But I want to emphasize what Steve said. If you do write a letter to the editor, send it to us. And if you're responding to somebody else's letter, send that to us as well. We'll put it up. We are always looking for op-eds. I made the decision a while ago to further weaponize Granite Grok on the idea of providing more emphasis for liberty and freedom. And I will do what's necessary to make that happen. Now, to pick on two other people here for just a moment, Tom and Ken are going to be helping to start Windham Grok. We think that there's an well, you can tell if you look through Granite Grok, and if you do a search on Windham, there's been a lot of stories coming out of here. But it's not just here. We also have Monadnock Grok, where there's stories coming out of the Peterborough area, and we have Chris Maidman out there. We may be getting somebody out from Keene. We've got, as Steve said, we've got people in Manchester. We just have to get them past We gotta get them to pop the clutch and get going. And there's an awful lot that goes on there. It's people who, I mean, I take the outlook is, my 2 sons served in the military. They fought with guns and bullets. We fight with keyboards for the same thing. And my goal is to try to get more people, even if only once in a while, to stand up and say, here's what I believe. It is worth fighting for. Ideas are more powerful than military hardware over the long term. I am looking for writers. Our standard process, if you want to, or if you know of people who want to write, tell them to send an op-ed to either skip@graniterock.com or steve@graniterock.com. Our usual process is we'll ask you to write 2 or 3 times, then Steve and I will put our heads together and we'll say, do we just wish to continue to accept more op-eds, or do we want to offer them a writership? And we're always looking for more.
And just so you're not scared by this, when I said we do 10 posts a day, or I could write 10 posts a day, and that you need to keep the promise, you don't need to do that. You could write twice a month. You could write once a month. We have people who only write every couple months. Cumulatively, it works out. That's just how they do it. They get an idea, it takes them a while to dig through it, and then they put something out that they're happy with. A lot of people can't get past the I'm happy with part, so they don't write anything. And that's fine. You know, it's not, you're not paid, you're a volunteer, you're just doing it because you have something to say, and we like the way you say it. That's it. So it's not, you know, if you decide you want to contribute or you know somebody who does, don't run them off by saying, oh, you gotta write all this stuff. You don't have to write anything. I will do all the work myself if I have to. It's fine.
And as long as I'm not other preoccupied playing with the equipment or other things.
Or your grandson.
Oh, yes. My 4-year-old grandson, who we have legally adopted, we're unfortunately part of the opioid epidemic. So he comes into my office several times a day, and Steve is always sending me a Slack message later on. You forgot to put the picture up. He didn't finish this sentence, yada, yada, yada. Yes, I lost focus because he came in for a hug and a kiss. Steve is the editor, and he'll even edit my stuff, and I thank him for it. But
I need an editor, by the way, because I have to do, you ever edited your own stuff? Doesn't work, does it? You read the email 75 times and the same mistake is in there. I have that problem.
But yeah, we do most of it. He can do 10, I can do 10. And yes, we've both been told, how do you turn it out so fast? Practice. And more practice. And then we get obsessed about it. But that's just the way it is. We don't expect other people to do that. At this point, you know, what is it we're trying to do? Grow the groks, the micro groks. So again, Tom and Ken here in Windham. I'm hoping that we'll.
What we're trying to grow is the message to create, because the media owns the message, they own the narrative. Everybody knows what's on cable news, which means they don't know anything. We want to fix that.
Because if you're writing locally and you're credible to begin with, people will read you because you're credible, and they know that you're credible ahead of time. And that's what we're looking for. As far as WMUR is concerned, I am playing with equipment. We technically have the ability to do remote broadcasts. So, you know, you see some of these national cable folks who, you know, have a reporter over here, over there, over there, over there. We have invested, we've been helped along by some donors. We could do that if I could sit down and focus. Go away, Benjamin, go away. And we could do that. And that's another thing, because Steve wanted to beat WMUR last December.
By Christmas.
By Christmas, not quite.
I don't smoke weed, but you'd think I did.
Yeah, the first time I read it, like he put it up in a blog post, he said, you didn't ask me? You didn't let me in on this?
Right? You gotta have a goal. That's how we got there.
Yeah, I know, and I panicked because I said, how am I going to make that work technically? Oh my God, what have you done to me? But now we have ideas of how to do that. Now I just have to take time away from writing and just do the technical stuff.
We can actually, if he gets it to work, say on a primary night or an election night, when you've got a bunch of different candidates, primary night, so you've got 4 or 5 Republicans running for the same office. We can have a remote grokster in each of those locations with basically an iPad that's a camera, wirelessly transmitting just like the TV station does, and we can report, and he could sit in his house on his laptop and see them all and basically produce live on the fly from 4 or 5 different locations all at once. We can do that. We have the equipment. We just haven't had time to make it work because we have real jobs.
Pretty much, although we did broadcast Saturday through Tuesday this past weekend for First in the Nation primary. We were on Radio Row, broadcasting audio and video from the Doubletree Hotel in Manchester, where all the big guys were, but we were the only ones concentrating on real local stuff for 4 straight days. And from what I was told, the picture was perfect, the audio was perfect, and they enjoyed the guests. So again, it comes back to, if you have the determination and the want to do things, one person can make a difference. We have had people, our writers, make a difference in very important things. So we want to offer up to you folks our voice that we built up over the years to get your voice as part of that. So, I think we've done pretty good at making a pitch tonight, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at this point,
Don't tell them it's Amway.
but that means we'd be getting paid and we don't get paid.
No.
So, does anyone have any questions for us? And I know I took one away because normally people ask, what does grok mean? How many here read Granite Grok? Oh my, we've been speaking to the choir.
I know.
So, yes.
Yeah, are you only looking for local, or do you want
Either or, any.
Whatever.
whatever?
Any local, state, national. If you follow the site, we have a lot of local stuff. We do a lot of national stuff. We do a lot of state, whatever. And, we make an effort to try to tie it all together. But sometimes that doesn't work, and that's fine. Because we have readers in all 50 states and like 40 different countries. Not a lot. We have 12 readers in South Africa. We have 75 in New Zealand and Australia. Just people who regularly come on and read. All the English-speaking countries, mostly. But there's a couple in Russia, there's a couple in China, so...
Tell the China story. The
there's...
guillotine. The Great Wall of Electronic China.
There's some news source search engine that's based out of China. And TCO. I don't know what it's called. I forget now. All of a sudden, out of the blue, we were getting thousands of hits a month from this source. I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm in the back end of Google going, what the heck is this? And I ended up having to Google it, literally, to find it. And it's just a news aggregation source based in China that was aggregating our content. Our content, little Granite Grok in New Hampshire. And then all of a sudden it stopped for some reason. I wonder why. And then sometimes it comes back. So,
Well, we know why it stopped the first time.
I forgot.
It was 30 days before the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. And the Great Wall of China basically cut us right off. We lost what?
Oh,
3,000, 3,000 or 4,000 hits a day. All of a sudden,
page
just
views. Yeah,
down.
it was a couple thousand page views a day that we lost just out of the blue. I'm just like, what happened? Thought we got shadow banned or something.
Yeah, that
So-
happens.
And yeah, so there's a lot of stories we could tell. I don't want to go off the tangent, but yes, anything from the conservatarian, meaning conservative, libertarian, pro-liberty perspective, if you're filtering news, information, opinion through that lens, we're interested.
Yeah. And just to emphasize that just a little bit, how many of you remember Tip O'Neill from Massachusetts became the New Hampshire Speaker of the House? His famous phrase was, all politics is local. We had a saying when we first started, especially with our radio show, if it's happening in our town, it's happening in yours too. And usually we would find some kind of a solution. So we wanted to get that solution out, or at least make it known that here's a problem. And I'm betting that most of you have problems in your towns, like Steve said, no matter where you are. we want you to share those because it may not affect us directly in our towns, but perhaps somebody over there is having a similar problem and then they want to follow what you're doing.
Yeah, so I have a question. So what do you do to vet against people that submit stuff to you that might be misinformation used to discredit your site?
Well, as far as the posts that we write, Steve and I do things a little bit differently. We do visit a lot of the same sites, but if I see a story and it's the only site reporting that particular story, and after 14 years, I go, this doesn't sound quite right. I'm not going to pick it up, even if it sounds like this would be a great thing to write about. But if I see it at 5 or 6 or more sites that I read on a regular basis that have proven themselves good over the years, then I'll probably write something about that as well. As far as individual tips coming in, we try to cross-vet with somebody else. You know, if, say somebody from New Hampton decided to send us something, well, we probably have contacts in that town, and we'll send feelers out to say, have you heard anything about this? Because, you know, we try to be good, we try to be correct. We do have failure, we do make mistakes. Sometimes we really do screw up. I know that I was doing a story on my granddaughter's school, and it turns out that somebody lied to me. And I found out about it from a sideways source, and I immediately said, we are done, I blocked the comments. I was lied to, I have to apologize to you all. It wasn't my fault, but because I was there, I had to take responsibility for what turned out to be a bad story. We've done that a number of times over the years. It doesn't happen too often, but when people tell us that we're wrong, and they can show us why we're wrong, we'll go as quickly as we can to correct things. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, you did a great story here. I didn't even know about you guys, but my good friend Derek saw this, and he made copies for me, and he said, hey, did you know about this? And,
This is by some guy named Ken Iron.
yeah.
Who the heck is that? And this has been you,
Oh, yes.
very recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are getting around.
We try.
Yeah.
We try quite a bit.
It, and to your point again, we will get op-eds that maybe, you know, you leave it up to the author to take responsibility. Our authors are responsible for the stuff they write. They're responsible for the pictures they use. They're responsible for the audio they embed. Ultimately, once we let authors on their own, it's them. They have to do it. If they screw up a lot, they're gone. It's just that simple. And are we going to make mistakes? Sure. Like Skip said, a lot of the stuff that we source is sourcing regular media. And sometimes that's just an opportunity to make fun of them. So we try to be careful.
I have a couple rules for our writers. One is if you're talking about something in a post, you have to link back to your original source. I have always said that that's good blogging principles and discipline, so that whatever you're saying, our readers can click on that link and go back to where they got that and double check, because oftentimes that will lead to other sites who may be also commenting on that particular thing. So it provides you a way to double check us and hold us accountable as well. But I generally have, besides that, and that's more of a writing discipline, but I have 2 rules for the authors. One is, don't write or display anything that would cause little Janie or Johnny to run to mommy and daddy and go, what does this mean? Because I'm the one who's going to get the nasty phone call or the email.
What's
So,
Schadenfreude?
well, that's one thing, and we've had one author kicked out because he wouldn't stop displaying bad things. It was sort of like death by blogging. He just didn't want to write anymore.
Yeah, it was self-inflicted suicide.
Yeah. So,
He couldn't come up with a good reason to quit, So he did things he knew would get him kicked out, which is fine.
Yeah. And I take it seriously, because although we talk about adult themes all the time, I've made the decision long ago, we will be family/kid friendly. The second rule is, once you become a writer, obey rule number 1, and then rule number 2 says, write about whatever you want. Yes, we do politics and culture here in New Hampshire, but you know, it really comes down to write about whatever amuses you. And sometimes it has nothing to do with culture or politics at all, which is good, because gosh, if that's all we ever wrote about, boy, would we be boring. Any more questions? I guess not. Well, anyways, for those of you, almost all of you who raised your hand to say that you read Granite Rock, I thank you for spending your valuable time reading Granite Rock, because I know it's something that you don't have to do, but you do it voluntarily, and we really do appreciate it.
Do you have an app?
An app?
Yeah.
No, as far as your phone is concerned, no, just use your browser and go to graniterock.com.
I'd like an app,
Yeah.
but it's down the road.
Yeah, I'd have to raise some more money.
It's not high on the list right now, but
No, not yet, not yet.
I got a question.
Yes,
So, what are your favorite websites and what are your favorite websites? Just out of curiosity.
if I had to pick one, actually, if I had to pick 2, they're both news aggregators. And it's Instapundit by Glenn Reynolds. He is a University of Tennessee law professor, libertarian. He was a single writer blog site for a long time, just like Granite Rock was when Doug left. He now has a stable of folks. They'll go out and they'll look at their websites and they'll bring back a link, and they may write a single line or maybe a little post or a little excerpt from that. And I get a lot of ideas from Instapundit. If I had to pick just one, it would be that. I also read Lucien.com, which is another news aggregator. A little bit wider area of what they will pick up, and their writers will, they think that stuff's pretty good. So those 2 are pretty good, but I will read anywhere from 25 to almost 100 websites a day looking for stuff. You wouldn't believe my browser and how many tabs I have open.
it's awful.
Oh, it's awful.
God.
And at the end of the day, it used to be early on, there were 2, maybe 3 major things to write about. It was easy. You knew what was going on. It was just a very little garden hose. Now it's a huge sewer pipe. As far as sizes are concerned, there's so much going on. It's hard to pick up, and as I'm working during the day, yeah, that looks cool, this looks cool, this looks and at the end of the day, I sit down there and go, oh my God, which one's the most important? And it's hard to pick it out. So those are 2, but Red State, Hot Air. Yes, I'll read CNN for the business news, because they actually presented a whole lot better than most other sites. CNSnews.com, Michelle Malkin. The Truth About Guns, BearingArms.com. There's just a whole bunches. I can't keep them straight in my head. That's why I have them in tabs.
Here, I'll help.
Okay.
So I have a feed reader that I use because it's easier to find news that way. He mentioned most of the ones. Legal Insurrection, which is a great site. Ace of Spades, which is also really good. And this is a little off the beaten path stuff. You can go to Instapundit, and there's a lot of stuff there from these other sites because they just aggregate. But I like the Volok Conspiracy and SCOTUS blog for judicial stuff. You're talking about courts, constitutions, things like that. Townhall.com has a pretty wide selection. The Geller Report has a lot of immigration, Muslim, Islamophobia kinds of stuff. It's pretty reputable. They have good links and sources that you can chase back to, Israel or wherever they came from. And then Mark Stein, always an excellent read whenever you have the chance. Western Journal has gotten really big. They have a really wide range of stories, and a lot of these sites sometimes pick up New Hampshire news too, or they tie back. And I'll quite often find a national story, and the first thing I'll do is I'll start searching state congressional candidates and reps and whoever to see if there's a link somehow. You can get a story out of that. It's an amazing way to do it. I did say American Thinker. There's just a ton.
Yeah.
And it really depends. I get up at 5:30 every morning, and I usually just get on my computer and I look for things I'm going to write about that day. And I may find 3 or 4 right away, or I may not find any. But it really kind of depends on what you feel like that day. You may get up and you'll see something about something the Supreme Court did, and all day you're thinking about judicial stuff. So as you're flipping through headlines, those just pop out at you. You pull them in, and you pretty much create a narrative through the course of the day in a series of blogs, whether you intended to or not. And so the website selection and the sources kind of change from day to day, but the ones Skip mentioned are great. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. And we should probably put up a list at some point.
Well, I used to have a blog roll, or what a blog roll is just a list of, and this is old school blogging. This is why we still have a lot of sarcasm and snark in how we write, because that's what it was like back then. A blog roll is just a list of your roll call of blog sites, and our web mistress, who we love dearly, said, nah, that's passé. So we haven't had it for a while, but now that you've said it, I would love to bring it back.
Well,
'cause
we
it
can
was-
just post it.
Yeah, we could just have a page.
Yeah,
Yeah,
put a post up that has them in it.
yeah. Because I
Blog rolls are
felt
good.
like Liberty Unyielding, IJR, Conservative Review. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The Breitbarts, all gazillion different sites. You know, you name the subject, they've got a site for it now. So, yes.
I have 2 things for you. First, you display an awful lot of content in every edition. You know, you have the title of an article, and then you go through and you have links from the article, and at the bottom you have all the tags, okay? I'm not sure many people know how to use that. Maybe you could have a little box on the right-hand corner about how to use this blog and quickly give them a rundown, okay? Because that way you can maximize your effectivity. Many people might be able to use it. How can I go back on a key phrase type situation and find what you've written on that? Because you haven't get incredible art.
Actually, we have a search bar at the top.
Yeah.
Well, just
Magnifying glass.
magnifying glass, just click on that, it'll open a line, enter the words you want. We have 36,000 articles over the last 14 years. Almost all of it about New Hampshire or a national issue tied to New Hampshire. I use it every day
Okay.
to find stuff because I'm like, I know I wrote about that.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
the
can't
problem.
remember when.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying, someone who just comes to the rock and likes it,
Yep.
and if you have a little box of this, if you're new to the
My
rock,
advice is just
then-
click on everything.
Yeah, I know.
No, we do have
Right click, open new tab.
an about page
Yeah.
that also has our frequently asked questions or FAQs. It has some of our policies, but yeah, at some point we probably could put up just a little bit of picture, how to use us.
Exactly, I mean, make it very prominent on the upper right. Okay, that's one. And the second one, you guys do an incredible job of keeping us informed. I mean, the variety of articles, the variety of authors.
Well, Jorge, you're part of the problem.
Isn't it?
You sent us stuff.
You sent us stuff, and this is where, once again, I get to say something that he doesn't like me saying, and I'm gonna hold on to the mic tighter. There was a time when my co-founder said something wrong as I was live streaming our radio show and everything. I'm not gonna go into the real details, but basically, it was almost a disaster.
It's kind of vulgar.
Yeah. And I was sitting in my study just watching the blowback from all of this stuff. And I was really, this is after 2 years of doing it, and I turned to my wife and I said, you know, maybe it's time to say, it was a good run, good 2 years, I had fun, but maybe it's time to go on and do something else. And then all of a sudden I got this email from Jorge. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. And my wife had left. the TMEW, when I write about her, the most esteemed wife. And she had walked out of the room, and I read that because Jorge said, a friend of mine just wrote this, and I think you need to see this right now. And what it said was, when all hell was breaking loose and the flames were coming up and the pressure plate was coming down, and I was really within 30 seconds of just deleting the blog site. We have to go help Skip and Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at names.
Yeah.
Skip and Doug. They have done more to help out with liberty and freedom than all of us combined. And I was just mesmerized, and I started crying. And I brought my wife back in, and she looked at the screen, knowing that, the Democrats, the progressives, the liberals, you mentioned whatever group it was in the Democrat identity politics totem pole, they were all coming after us with scalps. One of them actually said, no apology will ever be sufficient for what he did. And you're implicated because you were his partner. It's like, great. And I just said, look and read that. And she turned to me and said, you can't close it down now. You can't. The person who wrote that I didn't know at the time, was him. So, between the two of you, you allowed Granite Rock to continue on because I was ready to push that button.
Yeah. It's an incredible resource, I tell you. If we could really exploit it to not only keep people current as to what is going on, but become sort of a how-to town government. How many boards are there in the town that are autonomous? There are 3. The library, the selectmen, and the school board. No one knows that. And they're independent. And how do they work? Start giving that information so when you go to elections or go to a meeting, you can have the information to stop them in their own tracks.
Well, we hope the towns, the micro-blogs will help with that, because that'll be really focused on the local stuff.
But
They're all tied together. It's all.
But this is all throughout the state.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely, but once you write it on a microblog, it's in our database. It's all in the same database. So if you search it, it shows up, no matter what page you're on.
Yeah.
Let me give you a concrete example of what he's talking about, because I'm not done fighting it, but I did get rid of some stuff. Our local school board, because SB 263, Senate Bill 263, added gender identity as part of the protected classes of which cannot be discriminated against. And they've been dying to do this forever. Now, I don't know how many of you know what gender identity even is, but it basically says, I can feel like a woman tomorrow and go into any women's bathroom that I want. Even though I may have a beard and I've got this deep voice, that's just the way it is. Our school board immediately jumped on a 2008 New Hampshire School Board Association policy JBAB, that basically says boys can do that and girls can do that. And there's a whole lot of other stuff. There was one portion called Guidance C, which effectively said every transgender student has the right to be called by their preferred name and pronouns. Otherwise, you are in violation of this policy. Now you think about that and you go, really? Really? And when I saw it, because of some of the training that Jorge gave us as an early mentor, I recognized right away, we are a Dillon's Rules state, which means that everything is a subdivision of the state. No subdivision can do anything without authorizing legislation. So here was a subdivision of the state, a local school board, creating an ordinance or a policy that said, we have the power to declare and put upon a new unenumerated right to someone that then causes a legal obligation on others. That's exactly how I read that, and I went, I can't believe they're trying to get away with this. So I challenged them with an RSA 91A right to know request. List the authorizing legislation that gives you the power to a student or staff member that forces other people to use a name that they otherwise wouldn't do, or pronouns that they otherwise wouldn't care about, because that is now coerced speech. And as we all know, when I stood up at a school board meeting, I said exactly that, and then added this. Coerced speech results in coerced thought. We shouldn't even be here if you guys were doing your jobs correctly in teaching real civics and the history and the philosophy of our country. I defy you to do this. And I submitted an RSA, as I said, give me the authorizing legislation. They said, we don't have to answer your question. Then I said, all right, I'll change it. List all the authorizing legislation. We don't have to list it. This kept on 2 more times. Well, they got real good at talking to the lawyer, obviously, because we also, RSA 91A, all of the receipts, all the bills and invoices back and forth to their lawyer. So we kind of knew by joining up the dates what they were talking about. Well, obviously the lawyer didn't tell them about parts 7 and 8 of 91A, which says, here's the violations and remedies, which basically boils down to if a governmental official is not answering a right to know requesting, you know that they are responsive records to this, you can bring them to Superior Court. You will immediately be put at the top of the list. Forget about what else is going on. You go right to the top of the list. And if the judge decides that they are in willful violation, which at this point they were, they will be stripped of qualified immunity. In other words, they cannot hide behind the fact that they are elected or appointed officials. And they will be personally held responsible for costs. They can be fined between $200 and $2,500 each for each instance. And you get to recover legal costs if you bring a lawyer with you. When I told them that, I said, I'm going to give you one more chance. What they did instead, they changed that whole section to say a student should be called by their preferred name and pronouns, taking away the violation. Now, the next step is that they said, we now can pull in our harassment or our, I want to say disruptive, but that's not it, discrimination policies. Well, good luck with that, because I'm going to break it and see what happens, because it's a case of free speech. And it's also a case of free association. Those are the things I learned in part from Jorge. This is what we put on Granite Rock, so that people can understand, if you see a problem, we may already have a solution. And if you don't see it, ask us, and we'll try to point you to it. Or we'll go back to other people and say, how do you handle this this situation in your town? Because, again, I'm trying to weaponize it. If somebody's trying to stomp on your liberty and freedom, we're going to be right there behind you to say, screw them. Here we are, and we've got lots of people to help.
And we have lawyers on staff, not
Yes, we do.
Writers, lawyers who write for us.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and they have helped. They have written letters for us. There was, a discussion in Peterborough where it was a candidates' night, and only one media outlet was at least first allowed to report on it. And I went, up yours. And I contacted them, and they said no. I said, up yours again. See, two letters, 5 letters. I didn't use any 4-letter words, but they got the intent, and they still said no. So I had one of the lawyers on our writer staff write a letter to them and their chief. This was with the League of Women Voters. So the Peterborough person got it, and the state chair got it. We were allowed entrance real quick. What I learned early on, when people want to be bullies, punch them in the nose. Usually not literally, but figuratively, it works. And it's all knowing what is the law and what are your rights. Governments have powers, individuals have rights. You have to know the difference, and you have to know what a right really is. And in the case of that policy JBAB for transgenders, free speech.
Yeah.
I have the right to free speech.
Yeah.
It is innate to me as a citizen, as a human being. I can say anything I want and government cannot stop me. It also means the government can't tell me what I have to say. But it also means that if I speak, none of you have to listen to me. You can get up and walk away. Because my free speech does not make an obligation on you. Also free association. You may not like what I have to say. You can just tell me go away, or you just walk away. You don't have to help me at all. That's what a right is. And that's what the School Board Association, as well as the Guilford School Board, tried to subvert. And that's what we're trying to help people with. When situations in your town come up, we're gonna help. And again, most of that comes because Jorge helped us and started us when we were on the, I served 3 terms on my budget committee. He was the guy who got me started to understand what is the real law versus what some of the people, the Good Old Boys Network and the Quality of Life people tried to pull stunts on us. They didn't last very long. Other questions?
More questions? I promise shorter answer.
I am the guy who writes long.
Dog's long anyway. It's okay. It's good stuff. Very good stuff.
Hey, if I could ask a question about a specific issue.
Sure.
Haven't heard an update lately on Jerry DeLantis' situation. Is there any news at all?
We haven't heard anything back. What he's asking about is, Sue DeLamis asked us, since we are friends with the DeLamises, asked us to gather names. The lawyer said he's going to try to make another pitch to get clemency from President Trump, because Jerry was a co-chair here in New Hampshire for the campaign. And we gathered over 400 emails of people saying, we want to sign this. And I sent that to Sue. I don't know what has happened to it as of yet. It's probably a good thing I need to, mark on my calendar for tomorrow do list and say, ask Sue. I haven't heard, I know it went out, but the wheels of government work very slowly, so I don't have an answer. I know that people are still writing in, so I'm gathering yet another list to add to that when I am asked.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
So, I have a question. I'm just getting familiar now with Granite Rock. Been on the site many times. But wanted to ask a general question, and over the years that you've been writing, taking a stand on a topic, has there been a particular issue or a couple of issues that you've taken a stand on that might have surprised the audience of Granite Rock, a typical audience of Granite Rock? Is that I took a stand here because of X, Y, and Z versus, I'm not always going to go down this line because it's a party line or what have you. Do you have any of those?
I have an example. And it's a very useful example because we talk about traditional marriage and we support traditional marriage. And we are conservatarians, so there are circumstances where we have a libertarian view of things. I'm a traditional marriage guy. I've been married for 25 years. I think it's the best thing ever. And so, but the gay marriage issue came up. First it was, well, we just want civil unions. And then they said, well, we lied, we want marriage. And the Democrats in the House, they controlled the House, didn't want it either. But then they strong-armed a few and they passed it. The rest is history. So when writing about the story, I was writing about it as a property rights issue because people were saying, well, they have a right to a contract to share their stuff. I said, you can have a contract with anybody on any terms to share your stuff. You don't need to get married. That's the law, right? So I said, does the state have an interest from a property rights perspective to ensure that that contract is secure? Right? That's a fair point, right? Who's going to make sure that your agreement, whether it's handshake or on paper, is honored? Somebody else might come along and say, well, no, that doesn't mean anything, and we want your stuff. We want half your stuff. So the state does have an interest in protecting your property rights per that contract. So and along that line, I said, look, it's a religious ceremony. In my mind, there is a civil version. I said, if you got your congregation, everybody in your church to decide that you would marry anybody, fine. You made that decision, the state should honor it. That was my position. So when people say, you don't believe in gay marriage, I say, I never said that. I said I believe in traditional marriage, and then I explained that I said, if your church says two guys can get married, the state should honor the contract, because that's what it is. Is that an example? And some people were like, oh, okay, and some people were like, really? You know, I mean, so that's, you know, I kind of took a different angle at it, but in my head, you know, in the real world, what's the state's business having anything to do with marriage, regardless of who it is? And the only thing I could think of was protecting property rights, right? Because it's a right we have, and we form governments to protect our natural rights. So that was one example.
And it's also an area, this specific topic, where we're not always all on the same page. As an evangelical Christian, I do bring that to the fore in what I write. I was against gay marriage. I'm still against gay marriage. I'm not going to stomp up and down and kick and get into a fight or legal action or whatever. It is the law. I may not like it, but that doesn't mean that I can't speak out against it. Because, you know, what does that now lead to? Because I was having a discussion with very much a gay advocate at the time on the radio show, and I said, okay, if sex is no longer the defining issue of male and female, man and wife, if it's two guys or two gals, now you've destroyed that limitation, you've destroyed that definition, as opposed to the other definition, which has also been destroyed, which is marriage was supposed to be for the raising of kids in a stable family. Well, nowadays, marriage has now become, oh, well, you fulfill me, you fulfill my needs. Well, what happens when you don't fulfill my needs anymore and off you go, and the kids are left in lurch? But then I asked the question that seems to be coming up now, well, if sex doesn't matter, what does the number matter? Why just 2? Why not 3 or more? And that's when he got really, really mad, because he realized that once that got thrown into the mix, they weren't going to win that discussion at that particular time. Now, as we know, with the U.S. representative throuple, a threesome, how corrupt that got, and that's a whole nother story, and yeah, I think one of us wrote about that.
We covered it.
Yeah, we covered it, of course.
It's too funny not to cover. I mean, it's just too weird.
Yeah.
Congress
But
was
yeah,
making her staff do sexual things with her, and it was just like, well, if she was a Democrat, so yeah, we had to cover it.
To answer your same question a different way, the one thing I'm most proud of is that we are consistent with a capital C, just like most people use a capital C for conservatives. We generally put ourselves on what is in the constitutions, the planks, and for me, what is biblically oriented. Now, I'll have the discussion and people may not agree with me, and that's fine. The other side seems to get very distraught and sometimes very violent against that, because how dare you not agree with me? You must be a hater, which I just kind of laugh at this point. And I just respond, well, I've been called far worse things by far better people, so, you know, don't even bother. But yeah, we very rarely will change unless some important facts come up that present a different, like Steve with his property view. Very few, when I first read about it, I went, okay, that's different. Let me think about that. And we have one guy on staff, Ian Underwood, who's always making my head hurt because he does make me think in different ways. But we pretty much have been consistent generally on issues. Now, do you know of one from reading Granite Rock where we've been inconsistent?
No, actually. We're pretty good. We're very good, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The most frequent incidence of that is when somebody who is maybe a more moderate Republican stumbles across some, like they've been reading us for a while and we haven't written anything about a Republican, for example, or called somebody out for something that isn't conservatarian. And then I'll get an email or a message or something, why'd you do this, da 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 da. And my answer was, like I said earlier, why'd you do that? You know, what's your excuse for not following the platform or the Constitution? I'll listen to your answer, I'm just gonna disagree.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, unless you were strong-armed by somebody, and then I'd like to know by who, because maybe I'll write about it, you know? So usually it is a Republican, and they are more moderate, or they've cast a vote that, and sometimes they can explain it. I'm not gonna say that I agree, but they make an argument that's like, all right, I'm not gonna write about it again, but I'm not taking anything down. So,
In fact, there's I'm not sure if he still is or not, but here in Windham, there was a state rep, Republican, said, I'm a strong conservative Republican, and, was voting for family medical leave and Medicaid expansion and a few other things. Yes, we have him on video saying that, and we commented upon that several different times. He was not a happy camper with us. Well, I'm sorry, but if you say it, we will comment on it, and then now we're back to the Streisand effect again. So, yeah, we will do that.
The one thing that, again, with the microgroks and getting the community involvement and everything else is, and we don't talk about our reach, our ability to do as well as the union leader because we're bragging. We're doing it for perception. If you're familiar with that concept in politics, perception is more important than reality. So when we talk about how we have all these readers and we're reaching all these people all over the world, which we are, it's not because we're amazing or awesome. We're fortunate, we're lucky, we're blessed to have people who will read the dribble that pours out of our heads. But it creates a perception because a lot of Democrats will complain about us and then say they never read us.
Yes.
It's like, you're a hate site. I thought you said you didn't read my site. How do you know what I'm writing? Well, so-and-so told me. How do you know they read it?
Yeah.
Okay? Perception that we have reach puts them on edge. It makes them think, not always. A lot of times they don't think at all. But especially on the Republican side, they start to think we could actually inform a lot of people about a bad vote.
And we do.
And we do. So the perception of reach is more powerful. Now, we do have a lot of reach. We want more reach. We want to build that all up from the local level. But that perception is amazing. Yeah.
Now, you do this out of passion and addiction, you mentioned.
Obsession, yeah,
Obsession.
addiction.
No, right. See,
Which is-
I had a heart attack 2 years ago, and the next morning I was blogging. Just so you know. So anyway.
So my next part of the question is, how do you get funded? And
We don't.
Well, why is it you think, just having a link for small donations? My suggestion is, people may read an article and say, hey, I'm gonna throw $5 here,
We do have a donate button
Yes,
on every page.
you do?
We added an ad package this year
Okay.
that helps bring in some revenue. We do get donations, like when we did Radio Row, we asked for donations because the hotel doesn't give you the space for free, it's very expensive. And we got tons of response, people are like, yeah, we'll help you out. Readers have never failed to support a project when we've asked for help. Quite often we use our own money. Skip's spent a small fortune until recently when we've actually been able to make enough revenue to pay the server fees and the bandwidth and all that other good stuff. But we do have a donate button, people do use it. And then if we really need money for something, we just ask.
Steve's right. For over a decade, every single month, it was in my pocket. There's the server fee. My wife put up with it because she said, you could be doing a whole lot of other things as hobbies that are far more expensive than this. And it keeps you out of a lot of trouble. And she didn't understand that it could get me into a lot of other kinds of trouble as well. Be that as it may. Yeah, we actually, one thing that has surprised us is that now we get these things called sponsored ads, and I want to be upfront. You will see posts that say third-party content. We grew so large that now people want to say, well, we would like to advertise with you, but in a different way other than just putting something up on the banner or the top or the bottom or what have you. So that has really helped over the last 5 months, and I just was never thought we got big enough people would want to do that. We have, and that person will remain anonymous, came up to us and said, You guys are the only ones, I grew up 3 miles from here in New Hampshire, and that New Hampshire is disappearing. What do you need to get to the next level? And that person was very, very generous. And, you know, we can squeeze a penny till both fingers and thumb meet it. And we were able to help finish the website, redo our equipment, which was failing. And we could quantitatively show we went from here to there. And it wouldn't have been possible without that person's help. And I will stand in front of you today and say, that donation, it was a large one. I nearly fell on the floor. But we made sure we made good use of it. We will be trying to do something on a regular basis, you know, a monthly subscription. Can you send us $5 a month or what have you? I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet because right now the expenses are paid. And as Steve said, we asked for help in redoing the website because our old one was literally failing and getting hacked all the time. This new one certainly helped.
That's why the hacking was bad. The version of WordPress we had was so old that you couldn't update it anymore, and it was just coming down, and it was like, no, we got to do this now.
Yeah.
So,
And our readership turned out in droves to help us. And then, again, Radio Row, opportunity came up for us to be the conservative white knights in a whole list of liberal dragon lair situations. And it made it happen.
nobody spit on us or anything here.
Well, you know, when we keep saying that we're armed with more than just opinions, even liberals will get the idea something's up.
Actually, the individual media people are pretty nice. It's when you get them in their little covens that you have a problem.
The organizations.
Yeah, well, they're working.
Just as an aside, let me just share this little story. Friend of mine who lives in Manchester, who she had been sort of interested in, I kind of turned her onto politics about 10 years ago, came up and said, I have got a story for you. And she said, you know, in Manchester, a lot of us, when this First in the Nation primary comes around, we just walk around the media events and we walk through the hotel to see what's going on. And years past, I mean, this is a thing, I didn't know about it until just now. But the media people would go and do the man in the street interviews. Anybody walking around, they wanted to know what they wanted, what they thought about what was going on and all of that. And she said, they're not doing that this year. They're just sitting by themselves. And they're talking just to themselves. It's like, you know, she's describing an echo chamber. She said most of them are morose. They're glum, they're dark, they're gloomy. And she asked one of the journalists, why aren't you guys doing this? And it startled me. And I still have to put this up on the blog site. I'm still not even caught up, you know, with what I want to get done. She said, she was told, we already know it's a foregone conclusion that Trump's going to get reelected. Now this is the tip of the spear of the Democrat Party, the media. They're all agreeing already. They don't have a chance. Now, Black Swan and Bloomberg are going to spend $2 billion. Who knows what's going to happen? So as you know, Glenn Reynolds keeps saying, don't get cocky. But the fact that she saw the difference and asked why, it's very different. So, you know, not many of the media people would talk to us. They realized who we were. The Democrat Party told them who we were, and they stayed away from us. So, you know, once in a while they'll talk, but as a group, nothing to do with us. Any other questions? Yes.
More of like I'm from originally from California, so like.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, born and raised too. So I just am curious because I've read some of your stuff and it's really good. I'm curious as to like what you guys think of because you guys seem to be fighting a battle that has already been won in California in terms of like the crazies taking over. Where you're saying how they go about governing, where they just kind of go, oh, we don't care what anyone says, we're just going to steal your vote and demand you guys pay whatever we say.
Boy, could I go on for hours on that question.
Yeah. No, trust me, I know. Yeah, so, because I'll tell you that what comes out of that kind of infrastructure that they've already put in place there, I see it already coming in here. And so I'm a veteran and I've been all over the world. I've seen how they've implemented things and I see what they've done in terms of how they've implemented it. And it's only coming from one side, really. It comes from both, but right now it's like really on one side. And what you said, there's a media blackout and they're just shutting down and not saying anything. That's actually like what they're told to say. And I'm just curious as to, because you guys are originally from here. And no? Okay, I'm just saying, man, most people in the room have been here longer than I have.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, what I'm seeing going on locally in my town, when you say like what's going on in my town or your town and everyone else might be experiencing the same thing, that's probably very true. What I see, I've also saw what was coming in California and it has come down in California in terms of how they go about doing this. So you see me here now on a Saturday night, or is it Friday? I don't know. So it's like, I'm here now kind of getting involved with whatever I can do because I know what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, and local government
Yeah.
is a democracy. So it tends to be more corporatist, it tends to be more socialist, unless people get involved. The people who are involved do everything they can to keep people who want to get involved and make a difference from making a difference, as you well know. And so that's part of basically everything we've talked about. It really is about creating the perception, and then inspiring people to step up and be on a budget committee or to be on a school board and to make a lot of noise. Because one or two people on a board can completely change the direction of that board. They can cause trouble, they can slow it down, they can communicate to the public about what's going on, which nobody else on that board wants to have happen. Because it's it's inside a bubble, it's their bubble, they're in charge, they know better than you do, and they intend to rule it, however it is, whether it's the library trustees or the school board or the budget, whatever it is.
Yeah, look how well that worked out in Guilford.
Right, so you need troublemakers, starting brush fires, et cetera, and so your being here is good, sharing Granite Rock is good, asking questions and getting involved is really, I mean, I've talked about this a lot lately, you know, the TCI transportation tax that they're proposing. I mean, right now, Vermont is very, very, well, it's almost red. It's almost red, they're so blue. And Maine is sliding down the slippery slope. Massachusetts is long gone. I mean, there are Republicans there, but they're really just, what do we do? New Hampshire's like this little island in a blue ocean. We are surrounded, and it motivates us to work twice as hard to give people an opportunity to come here because they can't stand living there anymore. But then when they get here, we have to remind them, you can't vote like you did when you lived in Massachusetts or Vermont, or it's going to look just like that. And like you said, there's a media echo chamber, and then there's us.
Cynthia Chase.
Go ahead. And then there's us. Cynthia Chase was from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island,
Progressive state rep. I actually got mentioned on Rush Limbaugh thanks to Cynthia Chase. I'm like the only one who knows that, except for Skip, because he's like, Steve, Rush just mentioned your name. I'm like, what? Why? What did I do? I was hoping it was a good thing, right?
It was.
Look, I had written a piece about her because she had basically said that she wanted the legislature to pass laws that would prevent free staters from moving here.
By?
What?
What is it that she said?
I don't remember exactly.
I'll tell you.
I wrote it, I don't remember.
She wanted to take away freedoms from the rest of us to make it distasteful for the free staters who are for limited government, maximum liberty. Most of them are libertarian. Don't agree with them all the time on everything, but boy, limited government, absolutely. She hated the idea that even she as a transplant would have to put up with people who opposed her, that she put that out. I put it up on Granite Rock. It started, or Steve wrote it and started putting it on. And I got to Rush, and I couldn't believe it.
I think Red State picked it up.
Oh, everybody did.
And then eventually, well, once Rush mentioned it, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's an example where you use what somebody says. I mean, and this was really before people were crazy on Twitter, but now a tweet can bring you down. So
Deb Stevens.
We ask people to screen cap that stuff, you know, especially if it's crazy, because you don't know how long it's going to be there. They might sober up and go, oh my God, what did I do? And sometimes I think that's what it is. I mean, they're just that little wine, Didn't intend to get crazy, but they saw something and they just tweeted it out. And the next morning they got up and they're like, oh, what did I do? And they can delete it. But if you screen capped it and you send it to me, we can make them apologize, or at least try to make them apologize. No.
At least embarrass them.
Embarrassed, yes.
Most of them can be embarrassed, not all. So anyways, California. We want, one of the purposes of coming here and talking to different groups is we want you to activate yourselves. We want you to stand up and realize what the founders have given to you, and don't let the progressive/socialists take it away, because that's what their aim is. You said, you know, I watch what's in California. I used to work with lots of people in California that hate it. They now having, their net migration out is getting larger and larger. And with respect to the 50 labs of democracy, I think you're going to see them be Venezuela pretty soon, because they're almost at the tipping point. If you took away Hollywood and Silicon Valley, they're screwed. Because people, either they're going to rise up or they're just going to fall into the sea figuratively. And it is incumbent upon us here, because there is a big push by the progressives. If you watch the laws that they're writing, they do. It's almost a national type of focus and coordination. Everywhere I look, Democrats that are doing bills here, almost every state, they're doing the similar kinds of bills there. It's like they don't care about the states. They just want one national venue. Screw horizontal or vertical sense of federalism. So it is. So, you know, if you see that here, make your stand. Make this your Alamo, even though that's in Texas, not California. Uh-oh, we're getting the hook.
They're getting hooked. I'm over here already.
I just want to give Dave Bates 5 minutes to. Dave Bates is the campaign manager for Bill O'Brien. And it looks like Bill's not going to make it tonight, but I wanted to give him just a chance to just talk just a little bit for 5 minutes about Bill and his campaign. Before I do that, I just wanted to, Mike, right?
Yeah.
So Mike mentioned that he's from California, and that he sees what they did in California, and he sees that happening here. Probably he's more astute than we are about that, because he's seen it happen. And as he made that statement, it reminded me of this Romanian woman that I spoke about earlier in the meeting. When she first came to America, she was sitting in her living room watching TV, and her husband was in the kitchen, and she said, "Oh my God." And she called him out, she goes, "That man's a communist. That man's a communist. Listen to what he's saying." And it was Ted Kennedy on the news. Everything they're just saying here, that's what they said in Romania. That's what they tell us. That's how they do it. So it just kind of clicked, because you probably are more tuned in and more sensitive to things than we are. I mean, this is a pretty smart group of people. I know these guys. And we can see what's going on, but you're probably hypersensitive to it. And that just kind of, I think that's really important. And, you know, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, you want to write a post or 2 or 10, you know, send it to these guys. You can send it to me too. And we'll get it on the grok, you know, so that you can help educate.
And you can write anonymously.
Yes.
You can write anonymously.
You can. Absolutely.
All right, so,
Let me just emphasize what he said. If it wasn't for the anonymous pamphleteers during the Revolutionary War, we wouldn't have had a Revolutionary War. They had their old-fashioned Gutenberg-type presses that put out the message of liberty and freedom, that we were under a tyrannical government.
This is a very important point.
And we have anonymous writers now.
We have a lot of things going on around in our town too, in Windham. And I won't get into them. I won't turn this into a political discussion for tonight. But I actually asked somebody, you know, to share their thoughts publicly, because there are some very serious issues going on here. And their response to me was that they have to be concerned about their family and the retribution and their children in the schools. And that's never bothered me, but I can see how it's impacted my family. And fortunately, I have, you know, My family members put up with that, but it's not always easy. But it shouldn't be this way. We're the government. We are the government, we the people. And that's the American experiment, and we need to make sure that never goes away. So I hope that you share the comment that you made about 91A.
Sure.
And the clause that Skip referenced in your few minutes introducing Bill and what he's going to try to do in the US Senate. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. So I wasn't really planning on speaking to you here tonight. Actually, we were hoping that Bill O'Brien himself would have an opportunity to come, and I think a lot of you probably already met him. Is there anyone who has not met or had an opportunity to go, oh, you haven't heard of him? Okay. Well, where are you from?
Hampstead.
Hampstead, okay. Well, I'm sure Phil is going to have him back here to Windham again in not too distant future, and feel free to come on out. But he's been traveling all over the state. In fact, we met Mike in Hillsborough, Hollis, right? Hollis last month, I think it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Tonight he was up in Lebanon at a gun show. Again, just traveling all over the state, meeting people. And so I'm not going to take the time to, give his pitch, because I think most of you already have met him or hopefully are aware of what he has done. Just as you heard the comment made about Granite Rock, that no other publication for sure has advanced, the constitutional libertarian viewpoint like that, like Granite Rock has. A similar comment was made about Bill O'Brien. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We were at the Liberty Forum. Is that when it was, Julius? 2 weeks ago, yes. And in preparation for that, Bill received endorsements by a lot of the leading liberty leaders in the state. Jason Soros, the founder of the Free State Project, and many other well-known people that are leaders in the liberty community. One of the endorsements mentioned that when Bill was Speaker of the House, or I forget exactly how it went, but it was a quote saying that liberty advanced more under Bill's leadership as Speaker of the House than virtually any other time. And one example of that was when Skip and Steve were up here talking about the 91A, doing right to know, and kind of putting pressure on local municipalities, the school board, and whatever. And he talked about the teeth that are in that law. And I just leaned over and said to Ken Eyring that we did that when Bill was Speaker. There's been a lot of other changes to 91A, but putting some teeth in it and actually making public figures personally responsible if they don't comply with the law. So removing that immunity and really making them accountable, that's something that we did. And many, many other just incredible things that many people didn't ever think would be possible to be done. When Bill was Speaker, he came into that position right after 2 terms of total Democrat control of the state. And as a result of Democrats running this state with complete control, House, Senate, Governor's office, and Executive Council, they ran the state into the ground, into near financial ruin. We inherited a deficit of over $800 million, and that and coupling the structural deficit with the intended tax cuts that Bill was promised to put in place, and repealing some of the onerous, very unpopular things that the Democrats had done, the LLC tax and registration surcharges and things like that. And they wanted to make the state more business friendly and reduce taxes. So we had to overcome the $800 million deficit and then also account for the tax reductions. And he wound up giving the state a balanced budget without raising any taxes, without raising any fees, actually lowering some taxes. And it took reducing state spending by about $1.2 billion. So when he talks about cutting the state budget, it wasn't a Washington-style cut where you just simply, don't spend as much as you intended to. These were real cuts. And it was necessary because, by law, we have to have a balanced budget in the state. And so that was something that had never been done in the history of the state, an actual reduction to the state budget of that magnitude. He took the lead in promoting school choice and putting into law, in fact, I think I was one of the co-signers to that legislation, the program for giving tax credits for scholarships, give educational choice. And I forget exactly how many, but loads of changes to reduce regulations and reduce burdens on our businesses. And so I think it's well known right now that New Hampshire is enjoying one of the lowest unemployment levels in the country. We're prospering just tremendously. And I think a lot of that, and I don't want to take credit away from the current people that are in office and those who have served since Bill was Speaker, but some of the structural, systemic changes that were put in place with Bill's leadership are what led to us coming into this period of prosperity that we're experiencing now. And again, I'm not trying to take all the credit for that. Certainly the current and previous legislatures reducing the business taxes, BET had a huge amount to do with it, but Bill took us from the brink of financial ruin in this state and put us on the path that brought us to where we are now. So he's done so many incredible things. I could take all night, and I probably already have spent more time than I should have, but I'd be happy to give everyone one of the cards so you can see our website and have our contact information. I didn't bring literature because I wasn't really planning on doing this, but I'd be happy to give one of these to you and look forward to scheduling another time with Phil to have Bill come back. And if you have any questions as we dismiss here, I'll be happy to talk with anyone who's interested. So thank you.
Hey Dave.
Yes.
The one thing you didn't say is that the opponents that are working against him do not have any of the experience that Bill has.
That's true. There are two opponents. There is
One
Corky
like
Mesner.
sources.
Corky Mesner, and we're not going to talk bad about them,
Yeah.
just give you the facts. Corky Mesner is an attorney that has a fairly large law firm, based out in Colorado.
Yeah.
He's owned property in the state and had, what used to be a vacation home, he's now come and declared it as his residence. And he has, assuming he voted last Tuesday, I trust that he did, that would be the second time that he has voted in person at an election in this state.
Yeah, he has no history here.
Yeah, so he's basically new to the state. It appears like he, wanted to be senator, so he relocated here, kind of like Hillary Clinton did and like Scott Brown tried to do. So anyway, I don't know that much about the man because he's new to the state. He has, both he and the other candidate,
Don Bolder.
Don Bolder.
Retired general.
He's a retired general. Neither one of them have ever held any elective office. And so they have
No idea.
obviously no voting history. You go to listen to them and they were both saying pretty much the same thing. They go down the list of all the bullet points that every conservative Republican always tells you when they're running for office. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We've had plenty of examples where we've seen people make these kind of assurances and promises when they're running in a Republican primary, and they say all the right things that you expect from a good conservative Republican. Then they get elected and they go to office and you just are so disappointed and you have voters' remorse.
Yes.
But with Bill, he has a record.
He's proven.
Proven record, proven conservative. His credentials are flawless. He's been endorsed by Ted Cruz. Last weekend, he was endorsed by I Vote America, a nationwide, very conservative organization, and many other endorsements as well. So you're right, Bill is the real deal. You know what you're getting with him. He's got a proven track record and absolutely flawless conservative credentials. So thank you for that.
Just to wrap this up, I was thinking about Bill O'Brien today, and I was comparing him to President Trump, and they're very similar in that they've made promises, they've kept their promises, but Bill's really, he took it a step further in that he dealt with the fiscal issues that we were dealing with in the state. The state brought up. You know, Trump doesn't have the Congress that he needs in order to start to reduce our debt and our deficit. You know, Trump's done a lot of great things, and you know, I think Bill O'Brien's a great guy, and he's a proven guy. But I'm going to leave it at that. We've got a ton of food in the back, and you know, we had a lot of nice conversations going on before we got started tonight. So if you're not looking to run out, you don't have to leave. We're not going to close the doors. If you want to grab something to eat and sit down and, you know, continue your conversations, there's a lot of nice friends to make. If you haven't met everybody, it's a nice opportunity to meet your neighbors. So thanks for coming, and thank you to the Granite Rock for showing up. Thanks for all that you guys do. Dave, thanks for the service to the state.
Thanks for
and
inviting us.
state rep.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Bill O'Brien. And you know, hope to see you next time we're here.
Are you gonna talk about the Windham,
What's that?
dock?
Well, Tom and I, we've been pushed, shoved for a while.
Encouraged.
Oh, yeah, right.
We've been wrapped up with a lot of other personal things, and I think I'm actually going to start a weekly column that you'll see hopefully in this week's paper. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but I think everybody's going to enjoy it quite a lot. And
they need help.
And I know that there's a lot of people here who, you know, are very thoughtful. And if you want to help us, you know, we can post to the Windham Rock, but when you make a post, you can also say post it to the main page too. So now you really have two audiences. You've got the state audience, or even, you know, the people who are, you know, halfway around the world. You know, they can see what's on the homepage when they go to graniterock.com. And if you go to the Windham Rock, they'll see the stories that are posted specifically for our town as well. So if you want to help us out, if you've got some concerns, you know, this is a great medium to get your thoughts and your concerns out, because a lot of people read it. It's a very credible site. And, you know, as I said in the beginning, we've got some issues here that a lot of people aren't aware of yet. And we're going to make people aware of what's going on. And it's very disturbing. You've only seen the tip of the iceberg. It's very troubling that the people who are representing us in this little town, this little hamlet, are not putting the people first in all instances. And that's a problem. So if you want to help us with that, if you want to write anonymously, you can do that. If you know, if you're afraid of or concerned about retribution towards yourself or your family, it's not a problem. You've got an avenue to get your thoughts out and share them with other people and make other people aware of what's going on. So, is that?
So is it a website or a Facebook page?
It's graniterock.com, and they also have a Facebook page. So, you know, they post in both places. You know, and if you look at the story that just came out on Wednesday regarding the attack at Windham High School,
Yeah.
I think that had 3.1 thousand Facebook shares. So a lot of people read that. A lot of people were aware of what went on here. And
But if it had been for you guys making it public, it would have never be known, because they tried to bury it first.
well, yeah, I mean, you know, Steve put that up on Wednesday morning, and then he's followed up with several other stories, and all of them. When you go to graniterock.com, at the top of the page, it says Hot on the Rock. And there's an algorithm just that automatically feeds the top 5 stories. I don't know, you know, over what range of time, but the top 5 stories at any given point in time that's getting the most traffic, they get posted up there. And for the longest time, for several days, the top 3 stories were all about the incident that took place on Tuesday night at the polls. So, you know, like I said, it's a great it's a great format to get your thoughts and your concerns out there, because other people read it. And, you know, if you're concerned, you know, about our constitutional republic, as I know all of you are, you know, this is a great way to help preserve it. So with that said, you know, don't feel free to, don't feel, you know, an urge to go home. Stick around, let's talk, let's get to know each other a little better. Okay, thanks for coming.
Crop